You've been lied to about kindness. You were told that being nice is the way the world works, that smiles buy safety, that patience earns respect, that if you're good enough for long enough, the universe will take care of you. But look around. The ones who climb don't glow with politeness. They radiate precision. They speak less and observe more. They understand that niceness, when unguarded, is just a disguise called harmlessness. And nothing in nature rewards the harmless. Look at the office politics that decide promotions, the social hierarchies that crown influencers, the quiet manipulations that shape relationships. They're not fueled by cruelty, they're governed by strategy. And that's what this story uncovers. What really happens the moment you stop performing niceness and start understanding power as a system of human energy, perception, and timing. Because the paradox is simple yet explosive. The real meaning of strength isn't domination, it's calm self-command. The world doesn't pay you for being good. It pays you for being valuable. But value is invisible unless you control the frame through which others see you. Write this in the comments right now. I choose respect over approval. Because that sentence will start cracking the old spell society placed on you, the spell that made you equate people-pleasing with virtue. The first dark truth is this. People don't see your intentions, they see the impact your presence has on their emotions. Nice people often believe their good hearts speak for themselves, but perception is an editing room and editors cut ruthlessly. Every time you over-apologize, every time you laugh to smooth tension, you're teaching others how to edit you, as support, not as center. Strategy begins the second you demand to be the storyteller of your own image. That doesn't mean you fake it. It means you frame it. Think of yourself as a signal in a noisy marketplace of egos. The strong know that attention is currency. They don't beg for it. They position themselves so it's offered. You can feel this shift in your body when you decide that your time and peace are scarce assets, not public property. A subtle silence replaces your nervous chatter. You enter rooms slowly with intent. You respond with pauses that make people lean in. Beneath that calm lies the first principle of strategic presence: controlled unpredictability. When you are entirely predictable, people stop calculating your value. Their brains file you as safe and therefore ignorable. But when you display quiet boundaries, declining favors politely, refusing to gossip, delivering results without commentary, you inject a microdose of mystery into every social exchange. The mind cannot resist what it doesn't fully map. The old version of you tried to bond by confession. The new version bonds by contrast. That doesn't make you cold, it makes you captivating. The second principle weaves in here emotional leverage. The world's most magnetic individuals don't avoid emotion. They curate it. They know when to mirror empathy and when to withhold it. Not as cruelty, but as navigation. Imagine a negotiation where the other person grows louder while you shrink into silence. Your stillness becomes a mirror that exposes their insecurity, forcing them to recalibrate. That's emotional aikido. Nice people try to soothe tension. Strategic people redirect it. And there's a strange kind of ethical power in this because you're not manipulating to wound. You're preventing yourself from being extracted. Society glorifies self-sacrifice until the sacrificial finally revolt. Right now, that revolt is awakening in you. You're starting to notice how often be nice was just code for stay small. You were rewarded for compliance, not contribution. But strategic kindness flips that. You can still be generous, just never at the expense of your own leverage. Repeat to yourself quietly but firmly, "My empathy is a choice, not a currency." Feel how that sentence rewires your spine. Another illusion falls away, that power must look loud. The most commanding people are often the calmest because composure itself is dominance disguised as serenity. When chaos erupts at work or tension flares in conversation, most collapse into reaction. You'll do the opposite. You'll observe, breathe, and delay. That delay is your control lever. In psychological terms, it trains others' nervous systems to oscillate around yours. You become an anchor they can't destabilize. It's not about wearing a mask. It's about refusing to let others script your emotions. Think of the last confrontation you lost simply because you spoke first, explaining instead of listening. Strategy lives in silence. When you stop trying to be agreeable, you create space to be accurate. And accuracy, cold, clear, calm, generates respect. This is the third principle emerging: clarity over comfort. The nice personality craves consensus. The strategic personality seeks alignment of interests. You can hear the difference in language. Nice says, I just want everyone happy. Strategic says, let's ensure our goals overlap. The first burns out. The second builds influence sustainably. Visualize walking into a meeting, a party, a family argument, and speaking half as much but twice as clearly. Watch how the air rearranges around you. People sense certainty like animals sense weather. And when your certainty radiates ethical steadiness, it becomes gravitational. That's the fourth principle quietly forming beneath your evolution. Moral authority through self-possession. Every society chases confidence, but true confidence is simply the absence of internal conflict. You've decided who you are, so external judgments lose jurisdiction. You no longer explain your boundaries, you enforce them effortlessly. The irony is that this makes your kindness sharper, truer, because it's no longer diluted by resentment. You give out of power, not fear. Pause and write this down somewhere, you'll see it later. Strategic doesn't mean manipulative, it means intentional. That sentence is your safeguard against drifting into cynicism, because this awakening you're experiencing can twist dark if you forget your compass. The Machiavellian inside you needs the moral philosopher beside it. From this equilibrium, your presence becomes a mirror in which others start recalibrating themselves upward. Yet, as with any transformation, there is a cost. When you stop being nice, some people will feel abandoned because they were attached to your compliance. They will accuse you of changing, of being selfish, of acting different. They'll be right, and that's the point. It's the metamorphosis of a background character into the author of the story. Each accusation is proof that your softness once served as their shelter. Now it becomes their reflection. In part 2, we'll descend further into the inner machinery of power perception, where silence, scarcity, and subtle defiance turn into your strongest tools. For now, hold this cliff's edge thought. The world doesn't reward the nicest version of you. It rewards the most disciplined one. The shift begins quietly, almost invisibly, like the moment a fog lifts and the outlines of a city sharpen. At first, you still say sorry without meaning to, still soften your tone in texts, still rehearse politeness to avoid friction. But then something strange happens. You start noticing micro-reactions, how a slight delay in your response makes people weigh their words differently, how holding your posture still while others fidget makes your calm feel commanding. It's a subtle game of psychological gravity. You're learning how energy actually moves between humans. You realize power doesn't scream or demand, it orbits. Anyone can crave approval. But the truly strategic understand that uncertainty is influence. Most people feel silence because they can't tolerate not being liked in the moment. You, however, learn to tolerate it like a diver accustomed to deep pressure. That's the fifth principle breathing its truth through you. Density of presence. When your voice, your gaze, even your pauses are saturated with intention, people stop hearing merely what you say. They start feeling what you represent. Their nervous systems read you before their intellect does. This is why some people walk into a room and everyone subconsciously straightens. Reality detects coherence. And coherence, you learn, is a kind of psychological gravity that nice people almost never develop because they outsource their self-definition to the approval of others. Say this aloud, quiet, deliberate. My silence is not uncertainty, it's calibration. Because now you're learning the sixth principle, pattern blindness removal. The reason manipulative people succeed is because they study predictability, the way pickpockets study movement. They expect you to respond reflexively, to over-explain, appease, or rush to smooth edges. Once you recognize that pattern, their influence dissolves. Observe next time someone tries to guilt you with an exasperated sigh or emotional outburst. Notice how your old instinct is to rescue their comfort. Don't, just watch. Let the discomfort breathe. That's not cruelty. That's psychological differentiation. Strategic people don't mirror chaos, they mirror clarity. The longer you practice this, the more visible everything becomes. Who's performing vulnerability to control attention? Who's masking insecurity with charm? Who genuinely respects reciprocity? The game board of human dynamics lights up like an infrared map. But beware, this perception can seduce you into superiority. So anchor it in humility. Curiosity keeps it ethical. Use your awareness not to dominate but to discern. Write this in the comments. I see patterns, but I choose integrity. The words shape your self-image in real time, because strategy without conscience is corrosion, and conscience without strategy is captivity. Your goal is neither to conquer nor to submit. It's to move like water within stone, taking the shape of power without losing your clarity. You start applying this in everyday exchanges. A colleague interrupts you mid-sentence. Your old reflex would be to defer. Now you let the silence hang for just a beat too long, then finish your thought slowly, every syllable landing with the weight of self-possession. The room recalibrates. A friend dumps emotional drama on you while you're drained. Instead of absorbing it, you listen with empathy but say, "I can hear how hard this is, but I don't have the energy to solve it today." The integrity of that boundary reorganizes the relationship dynamic instantly. Niceness would have given half-empty answers. Strategy gives full honesty with measured delivery. What you're creating here is what Machiavelli once hinted at, perceptual sovereignty, but you're decoding it for the modern world. It's not about court intrigue or royal advisors anymore. It's about digital attention, social capital, reputation economies. Your phone is now your stage. Your messages, your diplomacy, your image, the modern throne. Strategic kindness, applied digitally, means you don't overshare, you don't chase responses, and you treat every online presence as a sculpted artifact of who you choose to be. Because visibility without intention is self-exposure, but visibility with intention is architecture. The seventh principle emerges naturally from this: reciprocity management. You give, but you track. You mentor, but you test for appreciation. You never invest energy in black holes of entitlement. Nice once meant infinite giving. Now it means targeted generosity. Think of your attention as shares in a company. Allocate based on return, not pity. In relationships, this shifts everything. People who used to test your patience now test their respect for you. Some will be unsettled. That's expected. The world relies on predictable givers. The moment you reposition yourself, its rhythm changes. Every no you utter audit clears your value. Every firm silence redraws the economy of your social ecosystem. It's intoxicating, yes, but caution lives here too. The danger of newfound power is that it can spark arrogance disguised as enlightenment. Refuse it. Anchor in gratitude every day. Remember, you're learning these laws not to exploit weakness, but to transcend exploitation. Your quiet authority must protect, not prey. That's the eighth principle completing your psychological mosaic: ethical ascendancy. The stronger you become, the gentler your presence should feel. Not softer, but steadier, like a lighthouse that warns without boasting. People sense when power makes someone heavier versus higher. Yours will feel higher because it's governed by transparency. You won't lie. You'll edit. You won't dominate. You'll direct. The paradox remains central. When you stop being nice, you finally gain the capacity for genuine compassion because you can afford to tell the truth. Emotional honesty becomes your new charisma. Imagine someone confronting you, expecting excuses, and instead receiving calm accountability. "You're right, I handled that poorly. Here's what I've learned." That's emotional steel wrapped in humility, a combination so rare it disarms hostility. This is how ethical Machiavellians operate in modern life. They study manipulation not to imitate it, but to inoculate against it. The final echo of this chapter is a challenge. For 1 week, replace every automatic apology with deliberate language. Instead of "sorry I'm late," say "thank you for waiting." Instead of "I hope this isn't too much," say "here's what I'd like." Each phrase cements the identity of a mind that directs rather than pleases. The psychological armor you're forging is invisible, but it reshapes how reality bends around you. And yet the deeper revelation still waits ahead. In the third act, where morality and ambition collide, because the question isn't just how to move strategically, but how to do so without losing your soul. Part of you now glows with a new confidence, but another part whispers, "If I'm learning power, am I becoming the very thing I once feared?" That doubt is healthy. It proves your conscience is awake. The third act begins here in tension between strategy and soul. You've tasted what it feels like to be respected instead of merely liked, but respect comes with shadows. The moment people realize you can no longer be manipulated, they test you differently. Some retreat, others provoke. And this is where raw strategy alone fails. Without inner calibration, control curdles into paranoia. So you refine again. You study not just faces, but motives, context, rewards hidden beneath morality theater. You see it everywhere now. Social media influencers hiding insecurity behind curated virtue. Corporate leaders reciting compassion while quietly enforcing fear. You recognize the architecture of manipulation because you've learned to dismantle it. The beauty of that recognition is this: you can now choose transparency as a weapon. Imagine a meeting where someone subtly undermines you. Your old self would justify or smooth it over. The new you calls it out with respectful directness. When you frame it that way, it diminishes my contribution. Let's reset the narrative. You don't snarl or shrink, you reauthor reality mid-sentence. That is psychological judo. But here's the deeper layer. Real strategy requires emotional detachment from outcome. When you stop begging for validation, people's reactions become data, not drama. You start predicting behaviors like a meteorologist anticipates weather. Not perfectly, but with pattern fluency. Every compliment, criticism, sudden silence, they all carry information encoded in tone, timing, and tension. Write this sentence somewhere near you. I respond to signals, not noise. Because most suffering in social life arises from confusing the two. Noise begs for reaction. Signals guide direction. Once you start filtering like this, manipulation loses its oxygen. The manipulators can't find traction where there's no raw emotion to hook. You learn to hear words emotionally rather than literally. That friend who says you've changed isn't delivering feedback, they're mourning lost control. The coworker who warns don't be too confident is revealing fear disguised as advice. When you stop defending, patterns expose themselves. Niceness made you teachable. Strategy makes you untouchable. Yet freedom without insight becomes isolation. And that's the next test. Because there's a loneliness in evolution. The higher you rise in awareness, the fewer people can meet your gaze without shrinking. Your new grace must therefore include generosity for those still learning. The dangerous impulse is to retreat into smug detachment. Resist it. Remember that you too once traded authenticity for approval. True mastery involves remembering former versions of yourself with compassion, not contempt. The energy of contempt invites corruption. You'll know you're drifting toward it when you start seeking to win every conversation. That's ego addiction masquerading as empowerment. You correct it through the simplest ritual, daily humility. Recall one time each day when you misunderstood someone's motives and forgive both sides of that interaction. This resets power into service. You realize influence at its highest level is not about control at all. It's about alignment. When you align others' incentives with truth, you become unstoppable because you no longer drain energy lying to maintain illusions. That's why ethical Machiavellians succeed longer than schemers. They can survive their own reflection. Imagine leadership built on both warmth and boundaries. You listen deeply but never surrender discernment. You guide teams, friends, even family, not with commands but with calibrated questions. What outcome do we really want here? Whose need is driving this decision? Such questions shift conversation from emotion to architecture. It feels almost mystical. How simply rephrasing speech rewires collective behavior. You stop reacting to arrogance because you can name it scarcity. You stop feeling guilty for success because you decode envy, projection. The mind that sees clearly forgives swiftly but bends rarely. Write this in the comments. Clarity is my kindness. Because for the evolved strategist, honesty delivered calmly is the most compassionate act possible. You will lose some bonds because of this clarity. People attached to your earlier softness may paint your firmness as ego. And that's when you learn the luxurious art of non-defensive silence. To defend is to accept false charges as valid. To remain still is to let reality defend you. Those who know your integrity will see. Those who don't should not influence your trajectory anyway. Here arises another paradox. Detachment heightens connection. When you don't need people to replenish your worth, your interactions become lighter, truer, and paradoxically, more intimate. This is the stage where your empathy returns matured. Before, empathy drained you. Now it informs you. You sense others' emotions without drowning in them. You can hold rage, grief, or chaos in your presence and remain centered, because your nervous system is no longer for rent, and the result is magnetic in the purest sense. Others feel safer around you precisely because you are unmovable. They trust your steadiness, not your sweetness. That steadiness becomes its own brand of love, fierce, quiet, incorruptible. And just when you start enjoying this calm mastery, a new challenge arrives. How to sustain power amid success, when attention threatens to bloat your ego into the very tyranny you escaped. The next act will reveal that test. How to use strategy not just for survival or influence, but for legacy. How to rule yourself so completely that no one else ever can. The fourth act opens with an illusion shattering. You believed power would feel like triumph, like a cinematic wind whipping through your hair as everyone finally recognizes your worth. Instead, it feels like stillness, a quiet stability that others misread as distance. You've become the calm in every storm, and that calm unnerves the chaotic. They test it. They'll throw subtle provocations, baiting you with guilt or flattery, hoping to reclaim the old, compliant version of you. But you've learned, reaction is currency. Spend none. This is where the real discipline begins, because now the challenge isn't becoming powerful. It's protecting your integrity once you are. Success attracts parasites, emotional, financial, moral. You spot them by their speed. Manipulation always hurries. Strategy, by contrast, breathes. You start moving through life with the cadence of someone who no longer rushes to be understood. Every action feels heavier, more deliberate. Emails get shorter. Body language expands. You use silence where others use slogans. That silence terrifies people addicted to chaos because it mirrors their noise back at them. But for those attuned to truth, your stillness feels like oxygen. You begin to see how ethical strategy radiates. It organizes its environment just by existing. The difficult part is the loneliness between worlds. Too self-aware to rejoin the meek, too principled to join the cruel. Yet that loneliness is the crucible in which authentic leadership forms. The fourth law beneath this evolution is ownership of narrative. Whoever controls the meaning of an event controls its impact. Nice people surrender that meaning. Strategic ones reclaim it. Imagine being criticized publicly, not for error but envy. The old you would scramble to explain. The new you pauses, smiles slightly, and says, "It's interesting how success changes conversations." That single sentence reframes gossip into proof of growth. You are no longer a character in others' stories. You're the author changing genres mid-plot. But narrative control must align with truth or it curdles into tyranny. So you use honesty as your anchor. The higher your status, the more dangerous self-deception becomes. Keep asking yourself daily, what uncomfortable fact am I avoiding? Confronting that question is the only vaccine against arrogance. Repeat this affirmation: power expands my honesty. Let that burn into your subconscious. Because psychological corruption begins the moment power serves ego instead of purpose. You start using your influence like light, not to blind, but to reveal. You credit others publicly, even when you could claim the win. You study the nuances of reward psychology, learning that genuine gratitude multiplies loyalty more than fear ever could. But gratitude requires security. Only those unafraid of loss can share recognition. You become that kind of person, dangerously secure. Your generosity now has weight, not weakness. Yet beware. People will misinterpret empowering behavior as manipulation because most have never met empowered kindness before. Let the misunderstanding pass. Your actions will teach them faster than your arguments. And here's another hard truth. You can't save people who love their helplessness. Your compassion must learn discernment. Help only the willing. The rest confuse mercy with meddling. Write this down. I serve potential, not dependency. That single rule will keep you sane in a world addicted to rescue fantasies. You apply it silently. Mentor those who mirror responsibility. Distance from those who drain. This is not cruelty. It's efficiency engineered through morality. You're streamlining your emotional economy the same way a CEO trims waste. Every no becomes an investment in deeper yes. You'll notice how your social landscape shifts. Fewer people, richer dialogues, cleaner air. Influence condenses where attention used to scatter. But as your aura strengthens, so does the temptation of moral vanity, the subtle pride of being the wise one. You combat that with humor. Laughter, especially at yourself, is an exorcism of ego. Tell jokes about your own intensity. Confess that you too once chased chaos dressed as compassion. Humanity is your shield against haunting superiority. When people sense both your discipline and your warmth, they experience what leadership should feel like: anchored benevolence. This is the moment your power begins to heal spaces instead of dominating them. Offices become calmer when you speak. Friends argue less when you're around. Even strangers respect invisible signals, a gentleness carrying authority. And yet underneath this mastery simmers an unspoken danger. The inertia of success can tranquilize ambition. The strategist who stops growing becomes predictable again, and predictability invites conquest. So you evolve once more, this time inwardly. You seek philosophy, art, stillness. You remind yourself that strategy divorced from creativity rots into calculation. Study something useless purely for wonder: music, history, astrophysics. Let brilliance refresh cunning. The mind that knows both shadow and light cannot be possessed. That's your next threshold. Transcendence over manipulation through curiosity. You realize the final strategic paradox. Control comes not from domination but surrender. You surrender to process, to truth, to impermanence itself. Because the highest power anyone can wield is peace with volatility. In that peace, influence becomes effortless. Others interpret it as charisma, but it's just emotional homeostasis earned through relentless honesty. You're no longer aiming to win at power dynamics, you're aiming to transcend them. The old game depended on reaction. Your new game is orientation. You face life head-on, aware that everything, praise, rejection, uncertainty, is raw data for evolution. Those still acting from fear can't comprehend it. They'll call you aloof or intimidating, and you'll smile quietly, remembering that once you might have agreed with them. But awakening rewrites definitions. Intimidating simply means someone refuses to shrink. As you cross into the fifth and final stage, the atmosphere thickens with inevitability. Because now your transformation demands a reckoning. You've learned the secrets Machiavelli hinted, tamed them with ethics, softened them with humor. What remains to be learned is how power, once mastered, becomes service. The closing scene awaits, the metamorphosis of the strategist into the guide. The final act begins in silence, the kind that hums with realization rather than uncertainty. You've crossed the long desert between pleasing and power, and the horizon finally opens into something rarer. Peace. It's not a cinematic victory. No applause, no thunderclap of destiny, but a steady, regal calm that lives behind your eyes. You've stopped bargaining for space in other people's stories. You've built your own kingdom, internal, invisible, immovable. Now the true test. Can you wield this power without letting it eclipse your humanity? The old templates of manipulation and hierarchy no longer interest you. They feel childish, like board games you've outgrown. This is where most stop. Content with discipline, mistaking control for enlightenment. But the summit of strategy is surrender. You start seeing life less as a battlefield and more as a chessboard in perpetual motion. Except you're not merely the player. You're the awareness observing both opposing sides. Conflict becomes choreography. You're no longer baited by praise or blame. You study them as weather patterns. Someone attacks your integrity online. You breathe once, twice, and let reality self-correct. Someone tries flattery as infiltration. You thank them but offer no excess of ego for them to grip. That's what true dominance feels like. You are untouchable because there is no hook left in you to pull. And miraculously, this untouchability breeds empathy, not arrogance. You begin empathizing with manipulators, not to excuse them, but to understand the fear that built their masks. Their games no longer threaten you because you've learned the deeper law of all dark psychology. Control is a cry for safety. Once you feel safe within yourself, you no longer need to control anyone. That insight dismantles centuries of unnecessary struggle. The Machiavellian truth turns holy. Influence at its purest is guidance, not coercion. Imagine walking into any room now, the corporate meeting, the family dinner, the first date, and sensing the wave of human energy rippling unconsciously, every insecurity, every motive gently vibrating in the air, and you, steady, centered, compassionate, move through it like water, redirecting turbulence into symmetry. You have become both strategist and healer. The authority others feel from you isn't fear-based, it's gravitational respect. They sense boundaries without needing to test them. They feel seen without being scrutinized. That's when you realize the grand secret society was never them. It was always the conscious. The ones who bothered to study truth beneath etiquette learned how the universe trades in energy, not approval. The currency of power is stillness. Write this in the comments as your final vow. I am calm, strategic, and free. Because those words, repeated, finalize the rewiring begun when you stopped being nice. The people who once drained your kindness will either evolve to meet your clarity or fall away in silence. Either path is grace. You look back and see that every heartbreak, every manipulation, every exhausted apology was initiation. You were never weak, only untrained. The tenderness you once viewed as liability was raw material for wisdom. And now that wisdom demands expression, you'll notice others seeking you out, drawn subconsciously to your centeredness. Don't preach, embody. Ethical power spreads through example, not explanation. Someone watching you calmly enforce a boundary learns more about dignity in 3 seconds than hours of lectures could teach. The double vision that once felt lonely, seeing both outer behaviors and inner motives, now becomes gift. You can mentor without meddling, comfort without collapsing, lead without losing yourself. You are the equilibrium others borrow until they can generate their own. This is the cinematic moment where your story completes its circle. The same kindness that once cost you energy now fuels your influence. You give because you choose, not because you crave affection. You forgive quickly, not from weakness, but from efficiency. Resentment is an unwise investment, and you've become too strategic for bad returns. Standing at this height, you sense an invisible lineage. Every thinker, warrior, artist who learned how to balance clarity with compassion. You recognize their presence in you. Your power no longer feels like armor. It feels like light, a disciplined, directional force capable of creation rather than defense. And yet you keep your humor. You smile at the irony that becoming formidable turned out to be the gentlest thing you ever did. The world will still spin its dramas, but now you move differently through them. Slower, steadier, sovereign. Everything else is optional noise. Remember your signature affirmation: respect over approval, clarity as kindness, calm as strength. Say it one last time in rhythm until it feels carved into your marrow. This is not mantra, it's identity. You are now a strategist of integrity, a student of truth, immune to flattery and fear alike. The journey through dark psychology has absorbed the darkness and transmuted it into discernment. You understand manipulation's machinery not to copy it, but to dismantle it, to offer an alternative blueprint. Influence through presence, protection through transparency, love through precision. And as the imaginary camera pulls back, framing you against the vast indifferent beauty of the modern world, you are entirely still, a figure composed of careful choices and unapologetic peace. The music rises, not triumphant but reverent, because this isn't the story of someone who learned how to conquer others. It's the story of someone who learned how to stop being conquered by their own compulsion to please. Strategy became freedom, freedom became serenity, and serenity became contagious. End scene. The screen fades to black, but your mind doesn't. Instead, there's an afterimage, a bright, silent awareness that hums in the chest like truth finally recognized. You exhale, realizing this isn't an ending at all. It's the first moment of genuine authorship. You once played the game of power unconsciously, dreaming that kindness was your liability and strategy your corruption. Now you see they were always meant to fuse into one. What survives of you after all the psychological alchemy is neither mask nor manipulation. It's precision of heart. You understand at last that dark psychology was never about evil. It was about depth, about exploring the unacknowledged mechanisms that control our choices so you could integrate them consciously. And that integration makes you dangerous only to deceit, magnetic only to authenticity. You start noticing how peaceful people pause before they speak, how ethical power expresses through restraint, how even your smallest decisions, what you post online, how you greet a stranger, whether you say yes or no, carry the design language of your new awareness. Power has changed shape. It's become invisible architecture holding your day together. You don't brandish it, you build with it. Friends who knew you before call you mysterious now, but mystery is just clarity wrapped in silence. Your boundary, work has deepened into artistry. You no longer defend your limits, you dwell gracefully inside them. There's a strange beauty in not explaining yourself anymore. Silence has become your signature aesthetic. You spend your mornings not scrolling for comparison, but scripting intention. One sentence, one directive that orients your mind toward purpose. You've realized that self-discipline is nothing more than compassion, practicing foresight. The kind of compassion that refuses to let your future self clean up impulsive messes. Write this reminder somewhere visible. Integrity is the most radical form of power. Because true integrity is terrifying in a world addicted to contradictions. It's the refusal to fracture under pressure, the elegance of someone who can't be bribed by comfort or swayed by applause. Each step you take from here ripples quietly through every network you inhabit, family, business, digital life. People start moderating their tone around you without knowing why. That's the ecology of presence in motion. You don't command, it happens. You've entered the realm of effortless influence, where authenticity orchestrates attention more reliably than performance ever could. When someone provokes you now, you respond with curiosity instead of defense. That small behavioral difference alters the whole game. It turns confrontation into discovery, turns opposition into data. Slowly, methodically, you become a living demonstration that ethics and efficiency can coexist, that empathy wielded wisely can outmaneuver coercion. And there it is, the final revelation, the hidden moral heartbeat behind every Machiavellian myth worth dissecting. Power was never the end. It's the instrument. The end is alignment, mind, motive, and morality, operating as one smooth mechanism. You'll sense this integration most clearly in crisis. When chaos strikes and others flail for certainty, you'll feel an odd serenity, not because you're detached, but because you've rehearsed reality itself. You expect volatility, you adapt faster. That adaptability is your crown. Quiet, flexible, unshakable. You wear it invisibly, but it marks you unmistakably among the reactive masses. As you stand in that clarity, you notice how fear retracts like a tide pulled by a new moon. Your earlier need for validation feels distant now, like the echo of a language you once spoke but have forgotten the grammar of. Approval was the vocabulary of survival. Authenticity is the poetry of freedom. That's what your 1,000 steps through dark psychology were always preparing you for, not cynicism, but lucidity. You see manipulation for what it is, an energy, inefficiency, a low-grade desperation masquerading as cunning. You see love for what it can be, reciprocal stewardship of growth between sovereign beings. You see yourself finally, without distortion. No grandiose self-myth, no shrinking guilt, just the calm geometry of someone who knows they can be kind without being conquered. Take this final breath with awareness and whisper the distilled essence of everything learned. I am both gentle and unbreakable. Feel that truth settle into your posture, your gait, your social orbit. The video could end here, the music swelling, the comment section filling with echoes of awakening, thousands writing, respect over approval, clarity as kindness, calm as strength. It's cinematic, yes, but it's also practical, a ritual of reprogramming for a collective that forgot discernment. And somewhere between the flicker of light from a screen and the faint hum of your heartbeat, you sense that the story isn't about Machiavelli at all. It's about evolution, about what happens when awareness matures past manipulation into mastery. As the fade-out completes, that awareness stays with you, not as noise, but as rhythm, a quiet internal compass pointing forward. You rise, not to conquer but to contribute, moving through the world like a strategist of kindness in a time of chaos, proving that dark knowledge, when held with clean hands, can illuminate everything. And now as the last frame lingers, this is the part where everything loops back to you. You've traveled through deception, boundary, and rebirth. You've learned what power truly means. Calm, deliberate, ethical influence. You've felt the pulse of this transformation inside your own chest. The quiet defiance of someone who refuses to be used and instead becomes useful. And if you felt even a spark of recognition, if some sentence slipped past your defenses and spoke directly to the part of you that's done apologizing for existing, don't just let it fade into the algorithm's abyss. Feed the message that fed you. Hit like because each click isn't vanity, it's velocity. Comment the line that anchored you most so others can find it in the flood. Someone's scrolling through numbness tonight, and your words will be the breadcrumb that leads them home. And subscribe, not just to a channel but to a cause. Truth sharpened by compassion, insight braided with integrity. Each new voice that joins this movement multiplies its signal. It tells the digital world that content can go deep, that light and shadow can coexist. Imagine a network of strategic, calm, ethical minds, people who act with intention instead of impulse. That's what you're helping shape every time you share this story. The likes, the shares, the notifications, they're merely symbols, but symbols have gravity. They draw more seekers into the field. So as the screen dims and your reflection glows faintly in it, take ownership one more time. Tap subscribe. Write your chosen affirmation in the comments and let the algorithm know that awareness is viral too. Because what happens when we stop being merely nice and start being strategic isn't just personal evolution, it's a collective re-engineering of consciousness. You are part of that design now, calm, clear, and quietly unstoppable.